Thank you for joining us today for Lisle Township Democratic Organization, LTDO-TV. My name is Diane Hewitt and I'm the Vice Chair of LTDO. Today we're going to be talking about postcarding. It's a really exciting way to help get out the vote with people that perhaps we couldn't reach, or to help motivate them in a different way. It's been proven to be rather effective. The person that I know that has done more postcarding than any other person in the area is Holly Hoopman. So she is going to be teaching us about how to do postcards today.
Hi, my name is Holly Hoopman. I'm here today to talk to you about postcards to voters. Many of you may have received a postcard from a voter, or perhaps maybe you've done this project, but I'm going to give you some of the information that I know after doing thousands of postcards to voters. One of the things you want to think about when you're going to take on a postcard to voter project is you're going to want to think about two things. You're going to want to think about time, and you're going to want to think about money and how many postcards you can complete before the deadline. So what I always tell people, currently a postcard stamp is 35 cents. So you want to think about, maybe I can do 100 postcards, that costs $35, and then also about the time it takes to actually write and address your postcards. So you want to be thinking about, how much time do I have to commit to this? On average, I can actually write about 10 postcards an hour. I can't in one sitting do more than, say, 25 or 30. So you want to think about how much time you have in order to complete your postcards and make sure that you're getting a quantity that you can complete. The most important thing is, when you get your packet that you receive from the organization, that you complete it 100% and get those in the mail by the deadline. So when you get a postcard to voter packet, usually it comes with the count that you requested. It comes with a sheet that gives you your instructions, and it also comes with the addresses that you're going to mail to the voters in your area. I'm going to actually use today Lisle Township's postcard projects to voters, and I'm going to use their instructions. The instructions you get may vary, but for the most part it's pretty straightforward and they're all pretty much the same. So the first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to read your rules before you address a postcard. I highly suggest you stick to the project that the organization has given you, because they know their target audience and they know who are going to be receiving the postcards and the message they'd like to get across. So I'm going to go over these rules with you. First of all, you're only going to sign your first name. You're not going to use your last name. The other thing I'd like to mention, which it doesn't say on the instructions, is if you have a really unique name, I suggest you pick a name like yours that's a little bit more general. The reason being is because the person receiving this postcard doesn't need to get a hold of you, and so we'd like to kind of keep it more in that line. You're not going to put your return address. The return address is usually on the postcard itself, and so they can get a hold of the organization directly and not the person writing the postcard. The next thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to make sure that you've purchased 35-cent postcard stamps. You're going to want to make sure that you have pens like this that you can use. Although this project doesn't tell you this, I would suggest that you use permanent fine tip markers. The reason being is because postcards get wet in the mail and we don't want your message to turn into a watercolor. We want the person receiving it to clearly be able to read it. It'll usually have a date. The Lisle Township date is telling me October 15th, and I know that we're pushing this project out October 25th, 2025, but you do want to try and get them in the mail by the project date. The next up comes your message. The Lisle Township Democrat puts out a message. One of the things I suggest to people is, if you notice a grammatical or spelling error on anything that you receive, or you have any questions and you're not sure exactly how to do this, simply contact the person who gave you your packet. They are always happy to hear the feedback, and they're always happy to answer your question. Because it's really important for this project to be effective that you're doing it in the way that they'd like you to do it. Sometimes there's not answers to your questions on the sheet, so just contact the leader who gave you the packet. The message that we're going to be putting on today's is going to be simple. You're going to first pick a salutation. I prefer to use Dear Voter. I think that, to me, that's personal, and I want to be personal in my message. Some of the data will either come one of two ways. It'll either have the person's name or it will not. This does not have the person's name, so I'm going to be picking general salutations and general ones, and we'll get into that in a minute. So for me personally, what I like to put is Dear Voter. I find it to be very personal. And then I go on and I copy word for word the message that Lisle Township gave me, which is, what's your plan to get to the polls on November 6th? This potentially record-setting election comes at a critical time for our country. Join me and many others as we make our vote our voice. Your neighbor Holly in Naperville. Now, the other thing I would recommend is that there are examples of different greetings you can use. So, use what, really best represents you and how it flows best for you. Those are just my examples that I prefer. Then the next step is going to be that you're going to be putting the address on the postcard. And so one of the things, I know this seems really basic, but one of the things I'd like to mention is that the address actually goes on the right side of your postcard, the message on the left side. What's really critically important is that the stamp goes in the top right-hand corner. The sticker cannot stick over the edge or it'll jam the postcard machine and it'll never reach your voter. So we want to really be, careful of that. The other thing we want to be really careful of is we don't want to be writing along this bottom line, because that's where the postcard machine puts the address barcode and the information to get to the person that you've addressed it to. So try to make sure that you're not writing on this bottom line. And as you can see, one of the things I like to do is I like to put vote early under. I like to bling it up a little bit with some stars, be creative. I do suggest that you don't put glitter on them. Nobody likes to receive glitter in the mail. And I also suggest that you don't put stickers on them. They do jam in the machine, and that means your postcard will never get to its intended voter. The next thing you want to also think about is, in regards to postcarding, I showed you some examples of postcards that were already addressed. But you're not going to receive postcards like that. Your postcards are going to have pictures on the front of the postcards. Some of them may or may not have information on the address side, but the vast majority of projects are actually blank on the other side. And the reason for this is it's a lot more cost effective in printing. So what you're going to want to do is make sure you always start with the stack face up in front of you. You're going to want to make sure that you're flipping these as you go. If you start with the stack and it's upside down like this, odds are that they're not going to be in the same order when you receive them, and you're going to be addressing postcards upside down, and we really, really want to avoid that. So you always want to start with the picture up front. Have your pens ready. I really suggest correction tape. Nobody's perfect. And this way we're not throwing out postcards. We really want to try to not be wasting these cards. What I always recommend people do is they think about it this way. Take about 1/3 of the postcard like this and use your postcard and your marker. Simply make a line. What this does is this allows you to put the address on the right side, and it allows you to put the message on the left side, and this way your message is not blending in with your address. It's going to be really easy for voters to use. And depending on the size of your print, you can move this line back a little bit back and forth, because everybody writes a little bit differently. One of the things this project doesn't tell you that I really suggest is that you never use cursive. The reason for this is because a lot of young adults can't read cursive anymore. And so if you're writing all your postcards in cursive and someone 25 and older is getting them, they won't be able to read your message. And that's a really big problem in my opinion. So make sure that you're printing. The other thing I like to do is when I do my postcards, I really like to use 2 different color pens. I prefer red and blue. It's patriotic, makes me feel great about voting. One of the things I do is I always try to highlight the really key information. You'll notice on my card that I've highlighted the election date, November 6th. You'll notice on my card that I highlighted vote. This way, as the receiver's getting the postcard, even if it's headed to the recycle bin, those 2 words, vote November 6th, are going to stand out. And what's really important about these postcards is that when people receive them, it's unlike all the campaign literature that you get in the mail. So when they get this in their hand and it's personally written, there's a tendency that they're more likely to read it. But in the event that it is quickly going to the recycle bin, using colors is an effective way to really make sure that the basic information is being read by the voter. The other thing I'd also like to remind everybody today of, when you're doing these postcards as you're going down your data list, what I highly suggest is as you do each postcard, you are making sure that you're checking off right next to the address. The reason for this is it's really easy to get confused and forget where you left off, especially if you do it the next day. And the other issue is that it's very easy to duplicate accidentally to the same voter, and we want to avoid that. So you want to make sure that you're checking off as you go. And this way it'll prevent you having to figure out later, wait, which cards did I do and which ones didn't I do? The other thing I really suggest and I really promote is that these are really, really therapeutic. I do these when I watch the news at night, and I can tell you that it just makes me feel better because I know I'm getting out the vote. But what I also suggest for people, host a postcard party. Invite a few friends over, have some drinks and some snacks, ask your guests to bring postage. If your guests bring postage, then that actually cuts down the cost on you, the person throwing the party, to actually get these into the mail. So have your guests bring some postage, have them come over, have a good time. I assure you it's loads of fun, so definitely consider hosting a postcard project, because you'll be able to actually, probably in a 2-hour party with about 5 people, you could probably get about anywhere from 150 to 200 postcards done. The other thing I suggest is, let's say that you didn't get rid of all your postcards. Maybe all your guests didn't show up. That's okay. I like to send people home with homework. So what I always do is, whatever I have left over, I actually just make sure I have extra sheets of the instructions. The people at your party already know how to do it because they've probably already addressed 10 to 20 postcards, but make sure you have the instruction sheet with the messaging, with the data, and the correct count of postcards. I like to give people about 25. I think that's a good, reasonable amount of homework to give my guests. But mainly what's most important is that whatever packet you receive, it is extremely important that you complete the packet. If you have any issues with completing your packet, you need to contact the leader who gave you the packet and get those back to them so they can be reassigned. Because the critical part of these projects is what happens after the election. That this data is then analyzed, and the organization can see just how successful their project was and just how much it increased the vote. And they're more likely to take on the Postcard to Voter project next election. So definitely make sure that you complete your packet. Definitely make sure, if you can't, you contact your leader, and they're always happy to help you get your project accomplished. So until next election, enjoy postcarding. Know that we're on a deadline. We only have a few weeks. We still have a couple thousand postcards, so definitely contact Lisle Township Democrats so we can get these to voters. See you at the polls.
Thank you, Holly. That was super informative and wonderful. I feel like I'm ready to go make postcards right now. My name is Diane Hewitt, and I'm the Vice Chair of Lisle Township Democratic Organization, and thank you for joining us today for LTDO TV.